you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Moxie. Moxie, how you doing?
I am doing so great, Erica. Thank you for asking.
Well, you are in for a treat today because you know how much I love to talk about boundaries. And today's episode is titled The Gatekeeper, Setting Boundaries and Building Healthy Relationships. Building healthy friendships. Relationships, same thing, right? But listeners, you know how much I love this topic and how boundaries are so, so important. Setting, communicating, and keeping boundaries is really crucial to your personal and professional health and wellness. And today, my guest, Elly Malaxos, will share insights from her book, The Gatekeeper, offering young women tools to set boundaries and cultivate healthy friendships. And I love it. And the reason I love this so much is because I've never heard this explained in this way, and it is amazing. So we will dive deep into how cultural pressures affect girls' ability to assert their boundaries and provide practical strategies to help them build confidence and self-worth. But first, a little bit about my guest. So I had the pleasure of meeting Elly in this past August, and she is a speaker, an author, and a consultant with a passion for empowering young women to build confidence and healthy boundaries. Drawing on her own experiences and her background in IT consulting, Elly simplifies complex emotional topics through relatable frameworks like the house and yard analogy, which we'll get into in this first segment. And it is featured in her book, The Gatekeeper, Setting Boundaries and Building Healthy Friendships. And she is a distinguished Toastmaster and award-winning public speaker. Elly helps others amplify their voices and embrace self-reliance in their personal and professional lives. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Elly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It is. I mean, I am not kidding you when I say, I don't know, every show I somehow, kind of weave in the boundaries because it is so important. So I want to just dive right in. So during the intro, I mentioned the house and yard analogy. Can you tell us the origins of this?
The origins of this, part of it is my background. So I come from an IT consulting background. I have a technical background, but I moved into consulting where I had to begin to translate complex technical ideas to non-technical business people. So I'm a visual person, and I began to create visualizations and connections to things that are everyday life to make it easier to understand, like traffic or grocery stores or anything like that.
For those people who are not IT, like me, like that is very helpful. I don't know how many times I have to tell our IT people, dumb it down. You're talking to me, right? So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's a skill that was learned, and I found that skill to be very valuable as I was raising my two children.
Yes.
Because things get complicated for children. And especially if it's emotionally charged, and I have a very emotional daughter, much more so than my son. And I found I was constantly using analogies and different things like this. Well, it started when she was very small, but it really, the apex of this process and The origin of the house and yard analogy came in middle school for her. Everybody knows middle school is one tough time, especially for girls. I call it guerrilla warfare.
Yes, it is. Because kids are mean. They are mean.
They are, and they have no idea what they're doing or how they're doing it. They're just reacting. It's rough. And I had a difficult time during middle school myself. I was bullied. I was a nerd. I was, gangly and pimply, and it was rough. So I knew it was going to be bad. So I was going to be there for my kids. I'll be there. She had some troubles with her friends. One story where this first came out, a friend that she had had since elementary school, years they were friends, turned on her one day, just switched. And it was pretty much over the affections or attentions of a boy in class. She got jealous and just went mean. My daughter was heartbroken, felt betrayed, was crying. Everything was rough. So I said, okay, hon, and here it is. Imagine with me this. Imagine you have a house, your own house, not my house, your house, just yours. You decorate the inside of that house, anything you want. Big pillows, TVs on every wall, whatever makes you feel happy, cozy, and comfortable in that house. That's your safe place. And your house has a big backyard with a fence around it and a gate. And everything in that backyard is for you to have fun with your friends. Okay? Just use your imagination. We're just going to separate this for a minute. Maybe you have a pool, barbecue grill. Let's go bigger. Perhaps you have food trucks, roller coasters, celebrity concerts, whatever it is. It's imaginary. And it's a place where you invite all your friends to have fun with you. And the trick is now, only a few of those friends are good enough friends to be in your house. Everybody's in the yard, but only a few you're close enough with to come in your house because your house is your heart. Okay? That friend of yours was in your house. You were good friends for a long time. Now, let me take this example a different way. What if I invited a friend of mine over to my house and we had a nice dinner, but at the end of dinner, my friend got up and started breaking all my dishes, and then breaking my chairs, and then breaking all my glasses and my furniture? What do you think I would do? I have to kick them out. I'm not going to stay there and let them do that. The same thing happens in your heart. If your friend is breaking your heart in your house or hurting your feelings, you have the power to let them out, either into the yard or all the way out onto the street. You don't want to be their friend anymore.
I think that is such a great analogy, because you can still be friends with somebody, but friends at a distance.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think about it as a social media world, right? You have people that you might say are your friends, but would you let that friend come and stay with you for a weekend?
Right.
Even though you might communicate with them all the time via social media and you feel like you know them, but would you really let them in to your home? And it's funny is because I used this analogy actually just the other day. I'm like, well, we're friends. Well, I mean, we're not friends. I know her and I've talked to her a lot, but it's not like I've known her where she's come over and spent the weekend. She's a backyard friend. And they said, huh? And I laughed because I knew this episode was coming up. And I was like, no. I said, is this analogy? I first time I heard it, and I think it's awesome because you do invite people into your lives, and you set these boundaries, right? And it's appropriate, because not everyone is going to always come into your house.
Correct.
And if we look at our lives, professional, personal, I take professional, for example. You have something that's going on at your house, and you have a big assignment plan going on that you can't work late. Are you
Mhm.
letting them come into that part of your world? And there are times where, yes, you do move your boundaries. Like I will never say I've never moved my boundaries, because I have, and which is why I love this topic so much, because it's always evolving. What you
Always.
might have allowed before, you may not allow now, and
Mhm.
what you allow now, you may change in the future.
Yes.
It's all based on what you need and where you're at that moment in time. But I love this because you have your fenced in backyard, and you
Mhm.
may let folks in, and then you have your house and you may let folks in. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. And I think that's what people forget. Not
Yeah.
everybody's always allowed in.
Right. And that's okay. And
Yes,
sometimes for the younger set, they need to be reminded that different categories of friends is okay and normal and natural.
exactly. And it's also natural to remove them from being inside to going outside, because that might change.
That will
But I
change.
do, I love that, because it is. I mean, you go through life where I'll take a step back. I feel like it's really interesting when people tell, oh, we just grew apart, or they changed, or I don't understand it, they changed. And I look at that as, I sure hope so. I hope I changed. I hope I'm not the same person at 5 years old, 10 years old, 15,
Yes.
20, 30,
Yes.
50, right? I
Yeah.
hope I'm not, because I've had different life experiences. I've learned from my successes, I've learned from my failures, and my time has changed, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's where people do change, and they should. If
Yeah.
you're doing the same things that you were at 15, we might have to have an intervention.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. But it's important to understand that's for everyone. Everybody goes through changes.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily that our values and our beliefs change. It's how we understand them and how we
Yeah.
grow as an individual.
Yeah.
And that's why I think your house and yard analogy is so important, because you do have a right. I always say a reason and a season. People come into
Hmm.
your life for a reason and a season, and some of those people stay for multiple seasons, and some of them
Hmm.
only stay for a short time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that I remember when my son was going off into the military, he's like, I really don't want to lose these friends. And I'm like, well, bud, let me be honest with you. You probably will. That doesn't mean they're bad. That doesn't mean you're
Mm-mm.
bad. That doesn't mean that you're better or they're better.
Mm.
It's a reason and a season.
Yep.
I had friends who they were my mom friends, right? They were friends that when you were growing up, they were friends,
Yep.
and now we don't see each other as much. It's not that I dislike them. There was a
No,
reason and a season.
exactly. And there's nothing to feel guilty about growing apart or changing
Absolutely.
and acquiring new friends and changing places with friends. You can be friends with them forever and just catch up once every 10 years. It's also good.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
It's
and I think that's also great, right? To be able to have that. And I think this analogy, we'll get into it as we talk about managing the relationships, but I think it's a great analogy to say, where do we need to place them? And it's okay
Mhm.
to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how cultural messages erode boundaries for girls. But before we go, Elly, tell folks how they can reach you.
So you can reach me two ways, either at my website, ellymalaxos.com, ELLYMALAXOS.com, my email at contact@ellymalaxos.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn and message me there. Same name, Elly Malaxos at LinkedIn.
And you have also something for our listeners.
I do. I'm working on my audio book version right now. It should come out in December. And
And
anybody who emails me will get a free copy of the audiobook.
wonderful. And you guys, you want to get that. So take down the information, make sure that you message her. Thank you so much, Elly. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Elly Malaxos. Thank you again for being on the show today, Elly.
Thank you so much. Enjoy being here.
So during the last segment, listeners learned the origins of the house and yard analogy. And during this segment, we're going to explore how cultural messages erode boundaries for girls. So tell us what you mean by that. And, because my first instinction is, oh, be nice. Or my mom used to say, oh, be a lady. And of course, I used to laugh and I'm like, oh, it's way too late for that, Mom. But how do the messages that we give to the next generation mess with their boundaries?
So those comments that you had are the same ones I had. Also, don't be silly. You're being dramatic. What are some of the other ones? Oh, we're all friends here. Or just because they live down the block, you should be able to be friends with them. Or just because they're in your class, they're your friends. We only have one word for friend, and we weren't separating it out. And it's very difficult. And we started with the best intentions as parents and adults, but we delivered these kinds of messages to little kids. And the first thing that does is take away their power to identify their own boundaries, and they begin to doubt their own feelings. And the more they get that all their lives, we grow up. By the time we're 20, 30, we're on self-help channels looking to build self-worth and confidence again.
Yes.
So I'm saying let's rewind that and take a better focus on what we're saying to the kids.
Yeah.
You want to be a lady. We want to be civil. We want to be friends. We want to know how to make friends. But are we really giving them tools on how to do that? And not always. And especially with teenagers, because we all know teenagers are so hard to talk to. This is why I wrote my book in the way I did, easy to grasp, easy to understand. And it's more of a discussion framework to help guide kids through learning these boundaries, not doubting their feelings. If they think somebody's kind of creepy, the answer is not, well, he hasn't done anything, so he's not a creep. The answer is, why do you think that? Why do you think you feel that way? This is the kind of change that as adults or parents we need to make. The other thing I found is parenting myself. When the kids are really small, we go through a habit of telling kids what to do. As they shift into their teen years and their early teen years, into their latter teen years, you need to back off as parents and help enable them to take the actions themselves, not tell them what to do, but walk them through learning what to do and to take those actions. And we don't often do that. We just step in, we take care of it, we tell them exactly how to solve it. We're not teaching them the steps, the thinking, the analysis that needs to be done, the reflection. And these things are very, very important. We don't mean to do it, but we often do it.
Well, we do them that disservice, right? If we do everything for them, and again, not meaning to, right? If we step in to try to solve their problems, they're never learning how to solve their problems by themselves. And then they go out on their own and they don't know how to do
and they don't
all
know
the basic things, right?
Right.
And again, it's not meant intentionally. You have all the best intentions, but sometimes those fall short. And I think of how when you walk into a family event, let's say, and someone's like, oh, come on, go give Aunt so-and-so a hug. Go give Uncle so-and-so a hug, right? Well, no, if they don't want to do that, we're now eliminating their boundaries, because what if there is something, right?
Exactly.
And I always did. I'm like, you need to address the host of the house. You don't have to go give them a hug. You don't have to give them a kiss, but you need to go to the host of wherever we're at and say, thank you for having us over. You don't have to hug them. You don't have to,
Correct.
sit on their lap. You don't have to give them a kiss. Like, that was always a big thing with me, is that,
Me too.
and I have a boy, right? So I feel like it's more so with young girls, that you strip them of their boundaries sometimes at an early age without realizing you're doing it.
Without realizing it.
Yeah.
So, and the teachers do it, the counselors do it, the coaches do it. They don't even know they're doing it. And my first example with my daughter was she was in preschool. A boy hit her in class, and the teacher punished the boy. And I said, okay, when my daughter came home, she was really upset about it. I said, well, what happened? Did she punish the boy? Yeah, she punished the boy. I said, okay, why are you still upset? She says, because the teacher said we're all friends here, and I don't want to be friends with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, you're right. Teacher's wrong. He's a classmate, not a friend. You get to choose who your friends are. And that's when I thought, wow, I got to watch all these messages I'm telling my kids and what they're learning from others. It was just the best thing the teacher could have said, but she really was taking away my daughter's choice on who her friend was. And she was really torn up about it because she had a very distinct idea what a friend was. And this kid didn't fit in it.
Well, and it's interesting because I used to do women's self-defense, right? And so we tell people to listen to your internal GPS, your intuition. When those hairs on the back of your neck feel like they stick up and you feel in a bad situation, don't ignore them. And yet,
not at all.
We're trying to teach women to do that when all these other years we've told them things like this. And it's hard to undo all that unteaching, right?
It is.
And so when we allow them to assert their own boundaries and encourage them to listen to their intuition, it gets easier as they get older to establish those boundaries. And it's establishing them, then it's communicating them, and then it's keeping them. And knowing that, yes, there are times where you might move the line because it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah.
But that's your decision, right? Again.
But that's the point of it, right? It's your power. It's your decision, not anybody else's. Parents can't tell their kids who really they're going to be friends with. Right. It comes from inside. So these are things that are very important to me. And one of the other focal points on this is trying to teach kids when they're younger to give them this kind of power, gives them the self-confidence so they don't have to learn it in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Yep.
So I want to bring this conversation to the younger kids so they have some balance. They're smart enough to understand the difference between friends and just classmates and people out on the street and how to be civil to people who aren't friends. So that's what we need to teach. It's important that we make that distinction.
And it is, because you think about it, right? You go to work every day, and those are my colleagues or people I work with. I don't necessarily, I don't dislike them, but I wouldn't invite them over for dinner. And it's because they have a place in my life, right? And yet there are people that I work with that I do consider friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's where we establish that at an early age, so that they can understand and they can go through life and they can get themselves to the point where if a colleague is saying something wrong, inappropriate about them, it's not the end of the world, because they know this person has a place in my life. Yeah. It's not here in the heart.
It's not in the heart. It may not be in the backyard. It may even be on the other side of the fence too.
Yes, exactly.
You get to define it.
Yep. Yeah.
And you don't have to feel so offended if they're not that close to you. Like, you know what? That person is way over there. It doesn't affect me.
Yeah. And that is what is incredible about boundary management, and knowing that and again, this is both personally and professionally, right? Because you need to set boundaries at work, and because otherwise we end up getting resentful. Like, why are they always sending me this? Why are they always asking me to do this? Because you keep saying yes, right? You keep letting that in.
Keep letting them in.
And that is as much on you as it is on them. right?
Mhm.
If you're setting those and they're not respecting them, then you have to have a different discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of utility in this kind of an analogy. Work, romantic relationships, friends, everywhere you go.
Yes. So tell us again. So we want to make sure that, that the younger generation, and yes, we said girls, but this also applies to boys. But I think a
Mhm.
lot of times in generational, the girls were always taught to be nice,
Yep.
smile,
Yep.
be sweet.
Be
Where's your
sweet.
manners, right? As
Uh-huh.
opposed to boys, where you hear, oh, boys will be boys. And
Yes.
again, it's not a battle of the sexes, but we do know that a lot of times that's where it comes from. So we
Yep.
want to start having that conversation early with our girls, right? To
Mhm.
say that you don't always have to be friends with everybody. And you need
Correct.
to be able to trust your feelings and set those boundaries and enable them to reclaim their right to assert their boundaries, right? And listen to their
Indeed.
intuition.
Absolutely. It's very important to teach people to listen to their intuition because a lot of our communication unteaches exactly that. Like I
Yes.
said before, yeah. So what if he seems creepy? He gives you that gut feeling. I just said he, but it doesn't matter. Or she's,
Yep.
uncomfortable. They haven't done anything, so ignore it. That's not right. It's something to pay attention to, acknowledge, and just make sure that they're in the right place in your life. Maybe outside the gate, maybe far inside, the far outside wall of your backyard. However it works for you, it's your power, it's your decision. And that's something that I want kids to learn, that they do have that control.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the first steps to setting boundaries in friendships. But before we go, Elly, tell listeners how they can reach out to you.
You can reach me on my website, ellymalaxos.com, or an email, contact@ellymalaxos.com. Or, of course, you can reach me on LinkedIn. That would be the best social media place to catch me.
Wonderful. And you have a little something for listeners that is going to be coming out quite soon.
Absolutely. The plan is December. I'll have my audiobook ready for distribution. And anyone who emails me after this podcast and references this podcast will get a free copy of the audiobook.
Thank you so much, Elly. I'm Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Elly Malaxos. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Elly.
Thank you so much, Erica.
So during the last two segments, we have talked about the house and yard analogy and how cultural messages erode boundaries. But during this segment, I really want to dive a little bit deeper into the first steps to setting the boundaries in friendship. So we talked about the house and yard analogy, but how can we use that as the key tool for setting boundaries?
The first thing to do, since everybody's boundaries are individual, they belong to you. The first thing I'd recommend is taking stock of who your friends are right now. Where do you think they are? Are they close to your heart? Or maybe they're backyard friends? Just make a list, figure it out. And then I have a few tests that I recommend that may help you define where they are, because you may not be able to figure it out. This is new. It's confusing, but I expect a level of mutual respect. As I get to know people, and some of your friends you're going to know a little bit better than others, if they're in the house, a couple of other tests you can check. Sure, kindness is still there. Respect is still there, but even bigger. Another one is support. This one's a little confusing. Do these friends of yours support you? Do they support your goals, or do they compete with you? That's a good one. That happens a lot when the teenage years in the early 20s. Yeah, like girlfriends will compete with each other. If you are a teenager and you have a goal, you want to go to college, but the other one doesn't, are you being belittled for your goals to try to take them away from you? That's not the kind of support you need from friends in the house. You may want to consider that friend a backyard party friend. So these are the kinds of things that you have to reflect while you're in the house, your house. What's important to you? And are you getting support for those things from the friends and the people in your house? I talk about friends because they're a little easier to sort out before romantic relationships, which are much more emotional. So I focus on friends in this analogy to clarify it, but it also applies same with family relationships. But we'll stick to friends. And I said kindness, respect, and respect is across the board and it has to be mutual. It's a big, big, big deal for me. So I strongly recommend you test on respect, support, and then love comes eventually.
And I love those. I mean, because they're stepping stones, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I like to think I give everybody respect right off the bat, right? I'm not going to be rude to somebody in the generic sense of the word respect.
Mhm.
But it's also earned. And I think
Yes.
sometimes, that's hard as a kid growing up. It was always, be respectful. And I'd like to think, maybe at times, of course, I haven't always been, but I like to think I have been respectful to the degree them. And that's where, again, your
Mhm.
analogy comes into play. It's how do these friendships come into your life?
Yeah.
You might have somebody that you've known for years and years and years, but they haven't always given you all those things.
Mhm.
And then you meet somebody and it just clicks, and you're giving them the respect, and you're getting that in return. And then it leads to they're supporting me on my goals. Right. And I
Mhm.
always think of it as, I always say, be like a tree, right? Be like a tree,
Yeah.
and you seek nourishment. And that nourishment comes in so many forms. And it's the
Yes.
same thing as boundaries. That nourishment is the water, the sun, the elements.
Mhm.
And when you're looking at that, it's what is your nourishment? That's everything. That's what
Yeah.
you read, what you listen to, the people that you are around, and what, not only just what you're eating and exercising and all that, it's all that stuff combined. So if you're sitting in a room with individuals who maybe have bad habits, who are not supportive of what you're doing, or not, their goals aren't in the same direction where you want to go, you need to evaluate that. It doesn't mean, again, that they can't be friends,
Mhm.
but they're backyard friends.
Yep.
They're people that, maybe you go out and have a good time with, but they're not the ones that you might confide in, and that are
Exactly.
going to get you to where you want to be in life. And I think the biggest thing, I don't want people to confuse that. It's not about using people.
Nope.
Because I've said that in the past, and I've gotten a comment once on, like, oh, so these people are just stepping stones. No, they're not. But you need to make sure that if you surround yourself with positive people as opposed to negative people, like
Mhm.
those people who will bring your name up when you're not at the table, like,
Yeah.
I've got somebody for you.
Yep.
I think this person would be perfect. Those are
Yeah.
the people that you do want in your corner, because you're doing the same thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And balance is a big issue for me. I know they're an in-house friend when I have balance in my mutual respect, in my mutual resport and support. That works for me because I've been in out of balance relationships and they were really hard to figure out. And I was always unhappy and couldn't quite figure it out. Somebody who's just belittling me and my goals to get ahead on theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's funny. And I remember telling, it was probably one of my nieces, they said, well, I said I was interested in doing that. And my friend said, well, why? Like, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, let me take a step back. Was it why that she was being inquisitive? Like, why do you like that? Oh, that's neat. Or was it, why do you want to do that? That's dumb. right? What was the tone of that? I said, because if you enjoy that, it doesn't matter what anybody else. That's up
Exactly.
to you, right? They're not the
Yeah.
person working it. They're not the person doing it. And if they're not going to support you in that, even if they don't get it, like, I laugh. I'm like, I am not an IT person. So anybody that wants to go in IT, I'm like, good on you, because I don't get it. And I love that somebody else does. But I would never say, that's dumb. Why do you like it? I'd be like, tell me why you like it, because I am not that way. But you want to do that? All right, let's figure it out. And those are
Yeah.
the friendships that you need to have around
Mm-hmm.
to go forward. You don't need people that always agree with you. You need people who will question
Yep.
in a positive way, not question in a negative way.
Exactly. And that sometimes you're so desperate to keep hold of a friend that you've called a friend that you overlook that.
Yep.
And that is really important because we're all moving, we're all growing, we're all changing, and we support each other. Even if the friendship is growing apart, you can still support each other. You can
Yes.
be very happy for them. I had some friends who didn't want to go to college. They got married much younger than I did. And wow, I was there for them. I support them. We did eventually grow apart because my life just went different. I went to school, I went away. But that is still a fundamental part of support. It is very, very important amongst friends. And I like to also liken that to athletes who are good friends.
Yes.
Imagine a pair of competitive skiers or tennis players like the Williams sisters.
Mm-hmm.
They can compete. One has to win, one has to lose.
Yes.
They hug at the end of the meet or the match, and they celebrate the success that each of them has in perfecting their skills. They celebrate each other. They make each other better. And I love that when I see the Olympians do that at the end of their races. Somebody didn't get the gold, but they're hugging each other anyway.
Yeah.
That's support. And if your friends can do that with you, you've got that, and you've got people in your house. That's
Yes.
wonderful.
And that is, I mean, it is in the times of celebration and the times of I don't want to say failure, but maybe not winning. Because I feel like even when you don't achieve your goal, what you set your goal to be, you still win because you learn. If you allow
Yeah.
yourself to learn, right? But I think that when you have that celebration and you have somebody to go and say, you know what, I didn't do as well as I thought I would do, but I'm still happy. And then for that person to then be, yeah, but you went after it.
Yeah.
You did it. And
Yeah.
and I think that even in the scenario with you have two athletes, or if you have people who are completely opposite,
Mhm.
you have in excuse the terminology, but maybe you have somebody who is I always say a book geek, right?
Mhm.
And you have somebody who is the athletic jock.
Mhm.
But they're great if they're the best of friends because they still support each other in what they want, right?
Yeah.
And that is so important because yeah, I don't get why you do sports. I don't get why you want to sit in the library and read, but I'm going to support you in that.
Exactly.
And that really is about those boundaries that you can say, no is a complete sentence.
Mhm.
And it's, you know what, do you want to go out and go out for dinner? You know what? No, not Friday. Thank you though. That's okay. You don't have to give an excuse.
Nope.
And when you can have that relationship, that's important.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people forget that. And so, it's going to be November. And so remember, boundaries are about saying no. They're about
Mhm.
saying yes, but
Mhm.
maybe you can practice a little bit more, not being that people pleaser in friendships
Yeah.
and being able to say no and still know you can keep that friendship.
And still know you can keep the friendship. Yeah.
Yes.
And if it doesn't stay, that was a big warning flag right there.
Right.
It's,
Right.
if
If
a
you're going to
small
get
no has an impact on a friendship like that. Yeah.
Well, which before we go to the next break, what is some of that practical advice for recognizing when a friendship is unhealthy and the first steps to distancing yourself from that toxic relationship?
Yeah. So recognizing, like I said at the beginning of the segment, take a list of all your friends and think about them, right? Think
Yep.
about how you're happy. But sometimes they'll change. Something's bugging you. This is like some of the early signs. Something's bugging you, or you find maybe you're walking on eggshells not to make them angry.
Mhm.
I've seen those scenarios quite often. Even in just friendships, it changes a little bit. Or one scenario was had a friend who never wanted to go a place I wanted to go. We always had to go do things she wanted to do. It was
Yeah.
always lopsided. We had fun when we went, but if I said I wanted to go to this concert, she's like, no, that's I don't like them. Let's go to this other one. After a while, you start realizing that's kind of out of balance. And it wasn't all that healthy. And the relationship did ultimately fall apart for a variety of reasons, but they're clues. They're breadcrumbs dropped along the way to know this isn't A, it's not in balance. B, you're not being respected. And I had another scenario where somebody didn't respect my intelligence enough. Oh, and I found out that that was a really hard boundary for me. I don't like anybody to think I'm not really smart.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I found that boundary because I was so offended. I didn't know that before. So sometimes you just experience things and you just have to reflect on how you're feeling when something's making you upset or angry and what's going on there. Doesn't mean the relationship's necessarily going to fall apart or something's totally wrong. You might just need to fix something or take a time out. But it's the little things that creep up before it gets very toxic is what I'm trying to cue you into and let you pay attention to it so you can take advantage of all the tools at your disposal to get somebody out if you need to.
And these are for both children, teenagers, and adults, because I think a lot of us didn't learn these as adults. And you can see those in your relationships that you have now with friends. And I mean, I'm laughing because I'm like, oh, yep, yep. and I think that's important to recognize that this can happen in a variety of times in your life.
Yeah.
And you just need to, we've talked about this not too long ago. It's recognize the carnival. And what I mean by that is recognize those red flags. Is it a carnival going on in here and you've just been ignoring it because it's been a lot of fun? Or are there all these red flags that you've just been ignoring?
Yeah. And they're small. They're easy to ignore.
Yep.
They really
Yes.
are, and sometimes fear of loss will cause you to ignore it. You're afraid to lose a friend. That's a big one. So you just go, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Yep.
Fine. It's too small. Mom said I was dramatic. Yeah, never mind.
Oh, yep. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of those. I'm always dramatic. Oh, yeah. So all these kinds of things.
Or am I overreacting? I must be overreacting, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It could be overreacting again. Yeah, and men also often tell women, you're just being emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
the
something
emotions are there for a reason.
They're there for a reason. They come out differently in women. That's okay.
Yeah.
But when we're talking to women, pay attention to what those feelings are and what's causing them, where they're going, and how to knit it all together. And if I use the analogy like the house and the yard, that helps put some framework around where to think about things. And hopefully it makes it a little easier to categorize the feelings that go along with these relationships.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with how parents and educators can support boundary setting. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Elly Malaxos. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Erica.
So tell listeners how they can learn more about you, your services, your book that's out, and how they can get the little freebie that you have for them.
The best thing to do is contact me via my website, ellymalaxos.com, ELLYMALAXOS.com, or contact@ellymalaxos.com, or just reach out to me, text me via LinkedIn is another great way to contact me. I will be able to, I don't have any links exactly for my book, but if you connect with me, I do have copies of my book available. I can certainly work that out with you. But if you email me right after the show, anytime before December, my audiobook will come out in December, and anyone who references the show can certainly get a free copy of my audiobook.
That is awesome. And again, it's the gatekeeper, setting boundaries and building healthy friendships. And if you liked any of the information, the house and the yard analogy, you're going to want to get her book. It is awesome. So thank you so much for that. So the last segment, in the remaining time that we have, we're going to talk about how parents and educators, and even if you're not a parent or an educator, you're an uncle, you're an aunt, you're, a mentor, how you can support boundary setting. So I would just say, let's just get right into it. How can people support the appropriate boundary setting for the next generation?
Number one, check your language. Just because your parents told you to be a good girl, to be polite, you're being dramatic, probably isn't what you should be telling the younger generation.
Yes.
Think about how it disarms them, how it takes them away from their own control, their own autonomy. Just think about it. There's a lot of them out there. We gave a few examples. If you're telling them they're being dramatic, that's one thing we all need to watch. And the other thing we need to do is teach kids to be civil and how that is different from being a friend. I was never taught that other than just, respecting adults or behave properly, but that the differentiation was never made. And that's very, very important to just define difference to kids. Not everybody is a friend. The old man at the mailbox who delivers mail all the time isn't a friend, but there's still an opportunity to be civil in a guarded way. Great.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's one. But the other thing we need to do is help build the skills to resolve problems. We said it before, and it was spot on. Don't jump in every single time to solve their problem for them. They're being bullied at school. Yeah, there's sometimes you do need to step in, but at the same time, as a parent, you need to arm your kids with some coping skills, some resolution skills, some ideas on what's happening. Are they too close? Did you share too much information? How do we control the situation around you? What are your options? Walk them through different scenarios of what they can do so they can decide how to take action. Yeah. It's so important that the kids take the action. That's how they'll learn.
Yep. And I mean, don't get us wrong. There are times where maybe you do need to step in, right? But
yes.
But I think having them setting up those problem solving skills, and all right, so you have this issue. Let's talk about solutions and what are you comfortable doing with? What do you need to do because otherwise they're always going to be timid. They're always going to be that people pleaser. They're always going to like fall back and expect somebody else to help them when they need to do that, because that's a lifelong skill.
It's a lifelong skill, and it
takes practice.
It takes practice. That's exactly what I was going to say. It starts small and take action. It builds confidence. Just, the next small step builds confidence. And that's how we get our kids confidence and self-worth and autonomy. They feel like they can do it. It's very, very, very important. Yes, you need to step in and put some guardrails up because they're kids.
Yes.
But you don't do it to the exclusion of teaching them the skills to get through problems and resolve problems and discuss things. And the gatekeeper and the house yard analogy, that's a great framework to have discussions. It's not a one and done kind of thing. This is ongoing. Honestly, this analogy, I've been working with my daughter and other family members. I bring it up. It's been over 10 years I've been using this. over and over and over and over and over. It has so much utility. So it's a framework for discussion to help somebody who's coaching or counseling or parenting a kid to walk through different boundaries. Like, why was that uncomfortable? Why is this friendship high? What are you going to do about it? What do you think you can do? What if you did this? What happens? What do you think would happen if you did this? And so that's how I went through it with my kids. I walked them through all the possible scenarios, combinations of things that can happen so they can decide how they think they want to take the next step. They didn't have as much life experience as me, so I thought of a few extra things that they might not have thought of.
Right.
But they still have to take the final action on some of those, especially if they're having an argument with a friend. Let's talk about something like that. Nothing real serious, but those are the small things, and it matters. That's how they build confidence.
Well, it is. And you have to think of the where they're at in their life, right? Because I think that you said something that was key that triggered my thinking was you have more life experience, right? And as much as we want to say, oh, I want to protect them from that, but they also, it's something minor. And if they think that everything is, I'm throwing them out of the house into the backyard for every little inconvenience, little spat, that's not right either.
Nope.
So you need to have that conversation and walk through and let them have that decision. And I think that is so imperative. And it goes to the building that self-confidence, building your self-esteem, right? I'm worth, what am I worth? Because that self-worth goes to everything, into self-love, into, being able to be powerful in your stance and going through life in general. And I think that is the ultimate for setting appropriate boundaries.
Yeah. And then when you do that, you learn your boundaries. Maybe later you learn new boundaries, but it happens. But the other things parents, adults, teachers, aunts, uncles can do is support somebody who's making a shift on their friendship. What if they have to remove a toxic person from their house? It's not something that pretty much anybody can do on their own. They need a support system behind them to encourage them to stay strong, to not continue to put up with someone in their kitchen breaking their dishes, my first analogy, right? They don't have to put up with bad behavior, but they're at losing a friend. There's a loss, there's a fear, there's a lot of feelings. It's scary, it hurts. A support system needs to be there, be encouraging and supportive and helping them take the steps they need to get away from that person or to put that person out of your life or change the structure if it is really bad. So that is also very important, to be supportive. And in my book, I do give a few ideas on how to get away from a toxic person, and seeking support is a big part of it. I just think it's too hard to do alone.
Yeah. And I think what is one final thing that you think we, and the royal we, right? We as adults can do to support that boundary setting in our next generation?
Let them take action, but walk them through the thought process. Be their Sherpa in the problem resolution. So take a framework, take some scenarios, walk them through ideas. What would happen if, what would happen that, but still let them decide what their boundaries are. Sometimes it's hard for parents too, because your kids are different from you.
Yep. Model that behavior, but also let them be individuals.
Let them be who they are. Let them be, and they will grow confidently. They will grow self-worth. They will value themselves. They will stick to their boundaries, and they will grow up a lot stronger than some of us did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I hope for all kids today.
And thank you, Elly, so much for being on the show today. And I appreciate your time, and I love what you've done here. So everybody go out, get that book, and learn more about Elly and all that she's doing. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, ask yourself if you are living a rooted life. If the answer is no, set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action now. And if you're ready to live, love, and let go, then my new award-winning book and companion workbook, The Rooted Life, Live, Love, Let Go, is for you. Check out the bundle deal at the getrootedradio.com under the author section and order your signed copy today. And one final message. If you are hurting or you need help, please know the world is a better place with you in it. Reach out for assistance. Call or text or chat the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That's 988. They're available 24 hours a day and the cost is free. Or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through Crisis Text Line, which is a global not-for-profit organization. Again, available 24/7, and it is confidential. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Know that you are loved and you have the right to set your boundaries whatever way you need to. And I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.